Whispers filled the church as gasps echoed through the pews. This wasn't your typical wedding. All eyes turned as the bride rushed down the aisle, not toward her groom, but to embrace a homeless man standing in the doorway. Some guests looked away in discomfort. But what happened next? A dozen Marines in full dress uniforms marched in, stood at attention, and saluted her. What could possibly explain this moment? If you believe true kindness is never wasted, type "I'm outraged" in the comments. Every morning, long before the sun broke over San Diego, Emily Sanchez started her shift at Sunrise Bakery. At just 30, she was the head pastry chef, known locally for buttery croissants and cinnamon rolls that seemed to melt into your soul. But to those who worked with her, Emily was famous for something else. Something quieter. Each morning, like clockwork, Emily would finish her first batch, wrap up a pastry, pour a hot coffee into a to-go cup, and slip out the back door. On a bench by the nearby bus stop, she'd leave the package with a handwritten note. "Wishing you a peaceful day." The intended recipient never changed. An elderly man with silver hair, a weathered coat, and quiet eyes. He never begged, never approached customers. He simply sat, still and unnoticed, on the same bench every single day. In 6 years, Emily had never asked his name. He had never spoken a word. Yet not a day passed that she didn't leave him something warm. Some coworkers rolled their eyes. "She's wasting good food," they'd scoff. "One day he'll take advantage of her kindness," another muttered. 3 months ago, the bakery was sold. New management stepped in, and during Emily's review, her new boss said, "Look, your generosity is touching, but some customers have complained. Maybe donate to a real shelter instead." Emily smiled politely, but the next day she simply started arriving 15 minutes earlier, quietly leaving her offering before anyone else showed up. She thought no one noticed, until one morning a new hire saw her returning and blurted out, "She's been feeding that bum for 5 years." Loud enough for a customer to hear. The customer looked at Emily, shook her head, and muttered with judgment. Poor girl, thinking she's making a difference. Emily didn't react. She kept rolling dough with the same quiet focus. But deep down, those words lingered, not because they hurt her pride, but because people didn't see what she saw. Not a problem, not a nuisance. A person. Her own mother used to say the same thing. "You're too soft-hearted," she warned when Emily got engaged to Marco, a firefighter known for bringing home stray animals and helping strangers without a second thought. But Emily believed what few others did, that kindness didn't need to be rewarded. It just needed to be real. Have you ever seen a genuinely good person get misunderstood? Comment, "So unfair," if you've been there. Emily and the old man never exchanged more than a nod. But one cold December morning, she saw him shivering on the bench. Without a word, she left her own wool scarf alongside his breakfast. The next day, tucked under the coffee cup, was a note, shaky handwriting on the back of her usual napkin. "Thank you, and for seeing me as a person." She folded it carefully and tucked it into her wallet. On rough days, she'd read it again, a quiet reminder of why she kept showing up. As her wedding day approached, Emily ordered her cake from Sunrise Bakery and invited all her coworkers. Marco joked that she was inviting half the city, but he admired her open heart. It was one of the reasons he fell for her. Then, 2 days before the wedding, a strange letter arrived. Hand-delivered. No name, no return address. Just a simple envelope addressed, "To the bride, Emily Sanchez." Inside was a card with a handwritten message. "Tomorrow I will come, not for cake, but to honor a debt." The planner was puzzled. Emily felt something stir. The handwriting. Something about it felt familiar, but she couldn't place it. On the morning of the wedding, nerves danced in her stomach. From the bridal room window, she watched guests begin to arrive. Family, friends, bakery coworkers in crisp suits and dresses. Then, standing just outside the church doors, she saw him. The man from the bench, no longer hidden in the background. He wore a threadbare but carefully ironed suit. His old shoes somehow shined, his silver hair neatly combed. For the first time, Emily could see him clearly now, his face worn by time, lined with struggle. But there was a quiet dignity in his posture. He didn't shrink back or avoid the stares. He stood there, composed as though he belonged. Unfortunately, not everyone saw it that way. From the partially open bridal suite door, Emily overheard the murmurs. Who let him in? Did she actually invite the homeless guy? What's he doing here, looking for leftovers? Her stomach turned. She didn't care about the schedule, the seating chart, or the fact that the ceremony was about to start. She didn't care about the dress or the music cues. Without a second thought, Emily lifted the hem of her white gown and rushed out. She didn't hear the gasps, the photographer calling her name, or her planner's panicked footsteps behind her. She crossed the foyer and wrapped her arms around the man standing at the door. Tears welled up in her eyes, threatening to undo her makeup. She whispered, "I remember your eyes." The first time I saw them, back in 2017. The man smiled, a real soul-deep smile that transformed his weary face. "And I remember every morning," he said, his voice stronger than she'd imagined. "You always treated me like a person." She linked her arm with his to guide him inside. Before they could take another step, her wedding planner rushed up, flustered. "Emily, the ceremony's about to begin. Who is this gentleman?" Before Emily could answer, a sound outside caught everyone's attention. Sharp, deliberate, unmistakable. Engines, doors opening, boots hitting pavement. Then the church doors swung open in perfect formation. If you've ever misjudged someone before knowing their story, type "I was wrong" in the comments. 12 U.S. Marines in full dress uniform filed in. Their white gloves gleamed. Their medals shone. They moved in unison, a silent testament to discipline, honor, and purpose. Conversation died. A champagne glass slipped from someone's hand, the crash echoing through the now silent church. The lead Marine stepped forward. His nameplate read, Duncan. He stopped before Emily and gave a sharp salute. "On behalf of Alpha Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines," he announced, voice resonating through the room. "We are here to honor the woman who quietly kept one of our brothers alive for 6 years." Gasps rippled through the pews. Whispers turned into stunned silence. Emily looked to the man beside her, confused, speechless. Captain Duncan gestured toward him. "This is Sergeant Victor Hale, a Marine who saved 9 lives during a brutal ambush in Fallujah, 2004. The crowd froze. After losing his wife and daughter in a tragic car accident in 2016, he disappeared, never used his military benefits, never told anyone who he was. Another Marine stepped forward holding a display case, a medal and a faded photo inside. The image, a younger Victor Hale carrying a bleeding Marine through a street torn by war. In the background, a younger version of Captain Duncan. "He carried me 4 blocks under fire," Duncan said, emotion thick in his voice. "I had shrapnel in both legs. He saved me. Then went back and saved 8 more. Wounded himself. He earned a Silver Star. He never claimed it." He paused, glancing at Emily. "And if it weren't for you, Miss Sanchez, he might not have lived to be here today." Tears streamed down Emily's face. Her hand trembled in Victor's. "I didn't know," she whispered. Victor nodded softly. "That was the point," he replied. "I didn't want thanks. I couldn't save my family. I didn't feel like a hero. But every morning you fed me. You saw me. And your notes gave me a reason to wake up." Behind them, the Marines had lined up, forming a human honor guard stretching from the entrance all the way to the altar. Captain Duncan turned to the crowd once more. She didn't know she was helping a decorated war hero. She didn't do it for praise or attention. She simply saw someone in need and acted. His gaze swept across the room, locking eyes with those who had whispered earlier. In the Corps, we live by a code. Never leave a Marine behind. Emily Sanchez, who's never worn the uniform, understood that better than most who do. One of the bridesmaids, barely able to speak through tears, stepped forward. I work with Emily. She came in early every day, bought her own ingredients just to make sure he had something warm to eat. Another co-worker added, guilt clear in her voice. We used to tease her. We didn't get it. We didn't see him like she did. A guest stood up. We came for a wedding, she said, her voice cracking. But we're witnessing something so much more. A moment of grace, a ceremony of honor. Victor turned toward Emily, taking both her hands in his rough, calloused ones. I have no riches to give you, no fine gifts, only the truth and my thanks. I heard you talking about your wedding once, and I reached out to a few old friends. I hope you don't mind. Emily smiled through her tears. This is the most beautiful gift I could ever receive. Marco, her groom, finally stepped forward. He looked at Victor with awe, then offered his hand. Sir, it would be an honor if you walked Emily down the aisle. If you've ever received something incredible from a simple act of kindness. Type I owe a debt. Months passed after the wedding, but Emily never stopped hearing from Victor. Each month, a postcard would arrive. No return address, just a brief message from a different part of the country. Every breakfast is a salute. Thank you, Emily. Captain Duncan later told Emily that Victor had finally accepted help. He was using his VA benefits, receiving medical care and trauma counseling. With the support of his Marine brothers, he'd secured housing and, perhaps more importantly, he'd reconnected with a community he had long abandoned. On the first anniversary of her wedding, Emily and Marco arrived early to the quiet table. Waiting for them weren't just guests. There, standing silently in civilian clothes, were the 12 Marines, each holding a single flower. We'll be taking shifts here, Captain Duncan said. This isn't an honor we'll allow to fade. What started as one woman's anonymous act of kindness had become something far bigger. Veterans across San Diego now knew about the quiet table, a place where no questions were asked, no judgments passed, just warm food, open hearts, and dignity. Above the counter, framed next to a photo of Victor's old bench, was a note. Thank you for seeing me as a person. Beneath it, Emily had added her own words. Everyone who sits at this table has a story worth knowing. 6 months later, a local news crew came asking for an interview. Emily smiled and declined. This was never about me, she said. It's about seeing the invisible. On tough mornings, when the pastries ran out, when volunteers didn't show, when the world felt heavy, Emily remembered the day 12 Marines stood at attention, not for rank or glory, but for a simple act of care. Marco, her husband, understood that kind of strength. As a firefighter, he knew heroism didn't always wear uniforms or make headlines. Sometimes it looked like a handwritten note and a cup of hot coffee left on a bench. You know, he told Emily one night while they locked up the quiet table, when I married you, I didn't just get a wife. I got 12 Marines, and a family I didn't even know I needed. Emily smiled. The best kind of family, she whispered. The kind you choose, and the kind that chooses you back. If you believe a warm meal can save a wounded soul, type, I will live with kindness. Because some heroes live their final chapters in silence. Not in parades or medals, but under awnings, sitting quietly with empty hands and full hearts. Emily never asked for Victor Hale's past. She didn't need to. She saw tired eyes, a hunger, a man who mattered. And because of that one consistent act of grace, a life was restored. A unit remembered. A salute was earned, not for valor in combat, but for humanity in routine. Not every person who guards freedom wears a medal. Sometimes the greatest warriors eat breakfast alone. So the next time you pass someone on a bench, look again. Behind the coat might be a teacher, a healer, a marine. See them, and remember, quiet kindness can echo louder than any ceremony.